10 Fundamental Monetary Illustrations for Youngsters. While conversing with teens about cash, you'll rapidly discover that many accept they are specialists on the subject. As adolescents, they comprehend you go to attempt to bring in cash and that it takes cash to cover bills and purchase things. Most teenagers likewise know that setting aside cash and giving to causes and those less lucky is fundamental. Assuming your adolescent has sorted that out, they are all in good shape to dealing with their cash. Us grown-ups know, however, there's still much something else for them to learn. As youngsters mature and begin bringing in their own cash and spending choices, the stakes get higher. That is where we need to truly accept our occupation as guardians. While your youngster might think they know everything, turning out to be monetarily proficient is a cycle. Very much like your youngster takes math, history, science, and language expressions classes at school, there are fundamental ideas your adolescent necessities to dominate about cash. Teenagers checking a telephone out. The following are 10 fundamental cash illustrations each high schooler ought to learn. The sooner they grasp this data, the more noteworthy their possibilities turning out to be monetarily sound grown-ups. Needs versus needs. Spend short of what you acquire, save the distinction. Track costs and begin a financial plan. Save, yet begin effective financial planning early. Utilize the force of accumulated dividends. Figure out gross versus net compensation. Great versus terrible obligation. Your FICO assessment matters. Huge advances can truly influence your life. You can be a business person without assuming a lot of obligation. 10 cash examples for teenagers. 1. Needs versus needs. Your youngster might think they need the most recent cell phone, computer game, or even a vehicle. What's more, be ready for a thoroughly examined reasoning on the off chance that you question why they believe it's a need. While your high schooler may have a few valid justifications to call something a need, ensure you are firm and give models while examining the distinction among requirements and needs. A cell phone may be a need, however the most recent cell phone is a need. Without another computer game, they could miss playing with their companions on the web, yet it's as yet a need, not a need. It could help everybody in the event that your youngster can head to the everyday schedule, except much of the time an additional vehicle is needed in overabundance. However, we would rather not make an impression on our kids that their needs don't make any difference. On the off chance that they financial plan for their requirements and have a backup stash in the event that something startling occurs, they can set up bank accounts, otherwise called as sinking assets, for their needs. Rehearsing postponed satisfaction by fighting the temptation to purchase things spontaneously will assist with keeping them from venturing into the red later on. 2. Spend short of what you acquire, save the distinction. Your adolescent comprehends negative numbers from math class, so moving that to money ought not be hard. At the point when you reliably spend more than you make, you will wind up with a negative record balance. We really want to show our teenagers that assuming you spend each dollar coming in, you won't ever excel. Setting aside cash. At the point when you spend short of what you procure, you can cover your bills, keep away from MasterCard obligation, save for the things you need, and even contribute for your future. Your adolescent's objective ought to be to develop the whole. The greater the distinction between what they acquire and what they spend, the quicker their reserve funds will develop. 3. Track costs and begin a spending plan. Whether your youngster has some work, gets a remittance, or has cash from gifts in a record, they ought to follow what they spend and set up a basic financial plan. Most adolescents are shocked to see where their cash goes when they begin following the entirety of their spending. On the off chance that your youngster has a cell phone, they can utilize a free application like Wally or EveryDollar as opposed to saving receipts. When they have a superior feeling of the amount they spend and in what classifications, your high schooler can make a basic financial plan with a similar Cash the Executive's applications. In the financial plan, your youngster ought to think about saving cash to save, spend, and give. This assists teenagers with placing cash in the bank while as yet permitting them to mindfully spend. By making a giving asset, they can give to significant causes without stressing over hitting a financial dead end. New source of inspiration. 4. Save, however, begin effective money management early. At the point when your youngster begins planning and attempts to develop the whole among acquiring and spending, they'll have more cash to save. Consider acquainting your adolescent with exorbitant premium bank accounts for subsidizing transient monetary objectives. While the premium they procure on little record adjusts probably won't be critical, show them the ropes. 0.01% and 2% yearly percent yield, APY, investment accounts analyze. For instance, you'll procure $20 in revenue in the event that you have a surplus of $1,000 in a 2% APY bank account for a year. The equivalent $1,000 will just procure 10 cents following a year in a 0.01% APY bank account. Show your high schooler that you generally need your lucrative more cash. Whenever adolescents have gathered a few reserve funds, they ought to consider effective financial planning as well. The more drawn out their cash is contributed, the more abundance they will work after some time regardless of whether they store minuscule sums. Acquaint your youngster with straightforward financial planning terms and assist them with opening a venture account. Right now, you believe they should utilize the set it and fail to remember it contributing procedure, realizing that this is cash for long-haul objectives in the extremely far-off future. 5. Utilize the force of self-multiplying dividends. Your youngster currently comprehends the reason why they ought to utilize an exorbitant premium investment account. All things considered, teenagers love cash. For what reason would it be a good idea for them to make do with a neighborhood bank possibly giving a couple of pennies of premium when an internet-based bank allows you to procure dollars? Presently it is the ideal time to show them the force of self-multiplying dividends. At the point when they put away cash and it begins bringing in cash, they'll continue to acquire revenue on top of revenue. Assuming they leave the cash contributed north of a very long while, they'll see the enchantment or influence of compounding regardless of whether they never add more cash to the underlying speculation. Building interest. Time is the basic calculate creating financial momentum through compounding. The prior your youngster begins putting away cash, the more they'll procure over the long haul. On the off chance that they don't trust you, show them a diagram from investor.gov of a $10,000 speculation at 4% premium accumulated month to month more than 30 years by utilizing their self-multiplying dividends mini-computer. Without adding any more cash to the venture, the $10,000 develops to nearly $34,000. Your youngster can evaluate this adding machine so that themselves might be able to perceive how different starting ventures, loan fees, building recurrence, and years contributed influence how much your cash will develop after some time. 6. Figure out gross versus net compensation. At the point when your youngster finds a new line of work, they'll count the days until their most memorable check. In any case, the energy of getting compensated can go to disillusionment genuine quick. At the point when your adolescent ascertains what their check ought to be, they'll probably increase the hours worked by their hourly rate. However, kids don't understand or they fail to remember there are savings and derivations taken from income. To keep your adolescent from being stunned by their most memorable check, ensure they grasp gross versus net compensation. Cash will be kept for government personal duty, federal retirement aid charge, federal medical insurance charge, and any relevant state or nearby annual expenses. There may likewise be allowances for any retirement designs your high schooler might be qualified for through their manager. Your youngster ought to realize they might get a discount in the wake of recording a government form if a lot of cash has been kept from their checks during the year. Be that as it may, they ought to become accustomed to arranging their financial plan on their net compensation rather than the higher gross compensation they expected. 7. Great versus terrible obligation. Teenagers need to find out about various types of obligation. While all liabilities should be reimbursed as a piece of each and every spending plan, one sort of obligation can push you ahead while different keeps you down. Great obligation is cash you get that assists you with arriving at your objectives. Understudy loans can be viewed as great obligation in the event that they assist your kid with procuring a degree prompting business.